and we're doing the Theory Workbook Level 1B, looking at pages 5 to 8 today. So starting on page 5. This page, for some people, is confusing, especially if you did not do Level 1A last semester, because it asks you questions assuming that all these terms are things that you've heard before. So if there's anything you've not heard, I'll show you where you can look up some of it. You can also ask me if anything's really confusing. So they give you some instructions at the top. Basically, they want you to review some of the stuff you already know. So this part, this left column about variation 1, you're going to notice there's labels here. Variation 1 basically refers to this part of it, that line, and then into that second line of music. So this part is variation 1. So the left column is questions about those. And then the other column, variation 2, right? These are questions about the very bottom line, because that's variation 2. Just want to make sure that's clear. All right. So at the top, they say circle of a D, C, B, A, G 5-note pattern. So basically, anytime you see D, C, B, A, G, you're just going to draw a circle around those. And there's a lot of them. But again, it's just in those first 2 lines. You don't need to circle any other ones that you see in the bottom line. How many of them are there? And then they ask you about slurs. And we've looked at these a little in the piano method book. So the slur is when you've got this curved line, but it's covering different notes. You play them all, just keep them smooth. And then versus the tie, which is a curved line connecting the same notes, which you might see like here, right from here to here. That's a tie. Exactly the same note. You're holding this, continuing to hold that. Okay, so they want you to circle and label that tie. In what measures does parallel motion in between the hands occur? So parallel motion just means both hands are playing the same thing at the same time, right? Moving in parallel. So at the beginning, it's just right hand, the left hand takes over. They're all different. But when you get here, you'll notice both hands are going to play the same things at the same time. So they just want you to tell them in what measures does that occur. So as you're numbering measures, this is measure 1, measure 2, measure 3. So as you count, then you'll figure out what measures that parallel motion happens. All right. Questions about variation 2. Variation 1 uses a legato touch. What touch is used in variation 2? So legato is when you are playing smooth like this with the slurs. In variation 2, what you see are all these little dots, right? And if you forget some of those terms, and also there's other ones, repeated notes, stepwise motion, skipping motion, harmonic interval. Some of that stuff you can find if you look at the very back of the book. There's a glossary here, right? This is just inside the back cover. So if you want to look for some of these things are here. Okay, so looking over here, so legato is smooth and connected. Staccato is that short and crisp when you have those little dots. So some of these terms will be here. Not all of them, but some of them. All right, so let's back up to page 5 again. All right, so we are looking still at these variation 2 questions. Circle and label the repeated notes. I think that'll make sense. It's just when you play the same note numerous times. Circle and label melodic stepwise motion. That means you're just moving like these ones. They're just moving one letter at a time. You're not skipping any fingers, not skipping any letters, right? So you can circle some of those. Circle and label skipping motion, right? So when you find them, circle it and then just write for skipping motion. And then harmonic interval, we're looking at this in the piano method book also. That just means you're playing 2 notes at the same time. So if you're looking at like these ones, that's a harmonic interval and that's a harmonic interval. They're asking what harmonic interval that would be. So if you're looking at, that's a B and that's a D, right? So is it a second, a third, a fourth, a fifth? If you think about it, it's these 2 notes on the piano would be like this. Right, so that's a third. You're covering 3 notes, not playing the second one, but it's just called a third. So that's the interval that you're using. All right, so hopefully that makes sense. If you have questions, let me know. Page 6 is all about sharps, which we've been looking at in your other book, starting to play pieces with sharps. So they're just pointing out that a C sharp would be like this. A G sharp would be like this, right? You could have a G sharp here as well, right? And an E sharp, and again, these ones are weird. An E with a sharp, there's no black key, so it's going to be right here, right? So the sharp takes you to the right, usually black key, but sometimes white key. So just watch for those. And then they have you just circle all the C sharps and F sharps, right? So here's a C, you're sharpening it, so you can circle that black key, right? And F sharp, you can circle that black key. So just going across the keyboard and doing the same thing a bunch of times. the D sharps and A sharps in the second line. And then the last line is E sharp and B sharp. So both of these are weird. That's a B, so if you sharp it, you're right here. So you're just circling like that. All right, hopefully that makes sense. Page 7, this is drawing some of these things, some of the sharp signs. They have you practicing here, just on these dotted lines. Do notice you've got 2 vertical lines and then 2 that are just a little slanted, right? So they're not actually horizontal lines, they're just a little slanted. That way they don't disappear into the staff lines. Yeah, so we'll go through this and then you can see when I draw a couple of them. So here you're just naming the sharp note. That's an F sharp. So this one is a C with a sharp. So when you're writing the letters, letter goes first and then the sharp sign, right? So just make them just a little slanted. And then same idea here, but this one's bass clef. Just make sure you notice the clef signs. That's treble clef, that's bass clef. So you're just naming that's, if that's a C, that's a D, right, with a sharp. So you're just writing D sharp, right? Not too scary. At the bottom, this is, if you're going to get confused, it'll be here. Using whole notes and sharp signs, draw each note indicated below. So here they say use space notes because you have choices. So they want you to draw a C sharp in the treble clef. Right? So it could be the middle C, but that's a line note, or it could be this C up here, right? F-A-C-E, this C. So that's the better one to draw. So when you're drawing the sharp sign, it should go before the note, right? It goes after the letter, but before the note. 2 vertical lines, and then 2 that are just a little slanted. And the reason here, you can see why they're slanted. If you made them exactly horizontal, they'd disappear into those staff lines. So just a little slanted. So these should all be space notes. These 2 go in the bass clef. These go in the treble clef, right? F sharp, A sharp. So hopefully that makes sense. When you get to the second half of that, use line notes instead. And again, you have choices. You can say either every good boy does find that E, or you can do the F-A-C-E, that E sharp. But since they want line notes, you're going to use this one, right? So just choose accordingly and then put your sharp sign in the right place, a little slanted. All right, that should work. As part of page 8. Similar questions about flats. So when you have flats, you're just moving to the left. Usually it's a black key, right? E flat or a B flat. If you have places like this, you have an F flat, similarly with the sharps, right? If you're flatting an F, you hit a white key because there is no black key there. Okay, so on this page, you're just circling, right? Circle all the E flats and B flats. Circle all the D flats and G flats, right? So always like the D flat, you're taking your D to the left, so you're circling a black key there. Circle the C flats and F flats, and those are the strange ones. Here's the C, you're flatting, so it ends up being that white key here instead of the missing black key. All right, let me know if you have questions. That's it for today.